is wrong with you? I don't mean you, the viewer. I'm talking about my colleagues in the media. What is wrong with them? What's wrong with us in the media? You would think there was only one question asked and one question answered last night at the Newsmax moderated Senate Republican debate. Are Taiwan and the South China Sea national security issues for the United States? And if so, why or how?
I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not on national security. I'm not that informed on national security. But I do support the military. My brother was in the Air Force for 33 years. So I will do everything I can to support the military. My dad was in the Army. I'm not a polished politician up here. National security is not my thing, not my area of expertise, but I do support the military.
That answer is all the media seems to be running or tweeting about today. Really? The media thinks that this one question is so important to only talk about that and ignore the other 19 questions, which are 40 answers? The ad nauseum repeating and replaying today of that one answer by Senator Darling Graham makes the media look bad. That was certainly not her entire contribution to last night's debate, and nor was it her opponent's answer, his entire contribution to the debate. He doesn't even get a shout out today by most in the media. And today, as I listened to many TV journalists play only that soundbite and over and over and over, some had a mocking tone about Senator Graham. So I went to AI to see if those mocking tone journalists live in glass houses. Sure enough, I looked up some of the things those reporters have reported over the years. And yes, I saw both past mistakes, we all make mistakes, and even what I think might be whoppers. That, of course, is not our media's goal. Our goal, protected by the Constitution, is to inform the voters. But we don't do that well if we give one answer all the attention and ignore all the rest. By the way, one answer was 2.5% of all the answers at the debate last night. My guess is that you have not heard of the 97.5% of the other candidates' answers, unless, of course, you watch the debate. So this makes me wonder, as I often do, in general, are we in the media being fair to both politicians and voters? And by the way, this is not a one-off. Recently, the same, focusing on a bad answer, was done to AOC.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, you know, I think that this is a, this is, of course, a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Okay, she got mocked for that. And looking back, now that I think about it, I heard that AOC soundbite over and over and over again. And yes, I bet I aired it too. This is not to say these answers, bad answers by politicians, are not newsworthy. They are. Last night, my question about the China Sea was important, or at least I thought it was at the time, or I wouldn't have bothered to ask it. But consider this. Yes, Senator Darling Graham said she could not give me an answer. But in hindsight, she's not alone. Our U.S. government has been struggling with how we deal with and what to do about the South China Sea and China since 1979. And do you know what the U.S. policy is about this? Well, you better sit down for this. It is described as strategic ambiguity. Whatever that is. Do you even know what that means? I don't. I actually think it's code for our nation has no idea what to do. So in hindsight, while the South China Sea is an important issue for our nation, I wish I hadn't asked that question. I don't know that it was fair to ask when our own government, going back 47 years, can't figure it out. So how could I expect Senator Darling Graham or Congressman Norman to answer it and answer in 1 minute? Debates aren't quiz shows. They're not the SATs. They're to give the voters a chance to hear from candidates on many issues so they can make their choices who to vote for. Asking this question ended up likewise being unfair to her opponent, Congressman Ralph Norman. I know He's probably going to use it in campaign ads, but it so overshadows his answers to the 20 questions. No one in the media is paying any attention to his 20 answers. And like Senator Darlene Graham, Congressman Norman has a lot to tell the voters. By the way, since you probably did not hear all the questions are not being reported about, let me give you just a partial list of the topics that the media is not talking about, but the candidates did. How to lower prices, health care, both cost and improving access to health care, Medicare, Social Security, national debt, Dr. Fauci, America's relationship with Israel, China buying farmland in the United States, protecting our drug supply that originates from China, whether to regulate artificial intelligence or not, data centers and communities, pathway to citizenship, immigration reform, birthright citizenship, anti-Semitism in the United States, and much more. So I don't know how South Carolina Republicans will vote. That's their business. But I'll tell you this. Last night, sitting 10 feet from a new U.S. Senator giving an honest answer about not knowing something, I did wonder if South Carolina Republicans would find her candor refreshing, or whether they preferred a more seasoned representative such as a 5-term Congressman Ralph Norman. We're all going to know that answer on Tuesday. As an aside, last night, the candidates left so quickly that I didn't get a chance to thank them personally. I don't know about you, but I actually appreciate people running for office, whether I agree with them on one issue or more. I appreciate them also doing televised debates. I also know it's much harder to throw your hat in the ring and endure our media scrutiny, which is not always nice, than it is for us journalists. Yeah, we just sit on the sidelines. Yes, we have important jobs too. We have to inform, but we could always do better. Meanwhile, it's time for our Soundbite Shuffle. Sit back and let us scroll for you. Another round of primaries are in the books. Here is some sound from last night's winners, and socialism was a big topic.
Whether you're in Miami or even if you're in the panhandle of Florida, people in our state, they reject socialism. They do not want to see the Mamdani style, the AOC style in the state of Florida.
Look, I reject the DSA. I reject socialism. I'm a capitalist, and I think capitalism provides the greatest amount of economic mobility.
You have now a Democratic Party that has put up as their nominee a self-proclaimed socialist who runs a bookstore called the Resistance Cafe. There could not be a more extreme difference in candidates than what will be on the ballot this November in the state of Florida.
I look forward, Ashley Moody, to taking you on and to whooping you in November, and you will be calling me your senator.
And we're going to make sure we fight those damn Republicans.
People have escaped socialism, and when they hear folks from the DSA go on television and talk about, how they want to abolish the Senate, which, don't give Trump any ideas, and they want to get rid of prisons, and no borders. Most Americans hear that stuff and they say, what is going on?
Former Principal Deputy Press Secretary at the White House under President Trump, Hogan Gidley joins me. Nice to see you, Hogan.
Great to be with you, Greta. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Hogan, so what are your wins and losses last night?
I'm from South Carolina. I was executive director of the South Carolina Republican Party. I know the state well. People are scrambling today, both for good and for bad. I think there were some successes in your debate on both sides of the coin with both of the candidates, and then there were some failures that were obvious. I think Newsmax won the night. Great job by you and the others asking the questions. I know Van Hipp well, too, and he did a good job. And the voters of this state are kind of put in a tough spot because you had a senator that was beloved. Some people in the base weren't big fans, but they respected him. And now they have to condense this campaign into a really quick, tight window. And so Darlene's doing what she can do to try and get and meet the voters. And so is Ralph, who just ran for governor. So it's easier for him to do it. And you know this. We're an early primary state in South Carolina for the presidential election. We expect candidates to go to the barbecue houses, to the bakeries, kiss the babies, all the things. And so to put her in that position, it's kind of unfair, but it's one she finds herself in, one by her own choosing. So there'll be some difficulties in stumbling for her. But also Ralph has been in office for 20 years, for heaven's sakes, and a lot of the things he said was, I'm going to do this, going to do that. The obvious answer is, why haven't you done it? So there were some misses there, but I think overall it was a good debate for both candidates, and the people got to see the issues played out.
Talking to her, having some sort of sense of South Carolina, what's the enthusiasm to actually get out and vote, do you think, next week?
It is very, very low. Some internal polling I saw right before the actual primary election, not the runoff, but the primary, showed Darlene in the lead, but it showed her, no one had her as the number 2 in their choices for, amongst the other candidates. She was down 3rd or 4th behind the other candidates' supporters who supported Ralph, for example. Darlene was 3rd or 4th. The same thing for Nancy Mace and others. So the thought process is she's going to have to make up some ground. Ralph, I think, is in the lead. His internals have him up anywhere from 9 to 7 points, 10 points. But after last night, who knows? It could go up. But either way, it's about turning out the voters. And you're talking about the August heat in South Carolina for voters that love Donald Trump but don't necessarily want to get out on some random day to go vote in a primary. It's going to be very difficult to turn them out. I will say Darlene does benefit from the fact she has Senator Graham's campaign apparatus, which is extremely formidable, knows the state, very smart, and can pull some of those levers as needed to get people out to vote. But I don't expect high turnout.
All right, what about President Trump is going to South Carolina on Friday to rally for Senator Darlene Graham. Is that enough to rev up the support? Because I expect this to be such a close race.
I do. So glad you brought Donald Trump up. His endorsement of Darlene most assuredly helps her and puts her onto a competitive playing ground. What I'm looking for is if Donald Trump just does the endorsement for Darlene and stays supporting her, I don't know how far that's going to go. If he decides to go after Ralph Norman to some degree, point out the fact he hasn't been the most helpful on some of the most significant pieces of legislation, like the big beautiful bill, a lot of rule votes, et cetera. He was kind of the holdout that had to be arm twisted to get him to yes. That could be a problem for Ralph. So I'm looking for Donald Trump to yes show support for Darlene, but if he comes out negatively on Ralph, it could really hurt Ralph for sure.
What about the fact, and I don't know, how this plays, but former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, former ambassador to the UN under President Trump, won. She has endorsed Ralph Norman. What kind of weight does she carry?
That's kind of a that wasn't unexpected. Everyone knew that they're kind of close and friends. Remember, while she was a popular governor, she did run against Donald Trump, and that really made her less popular in the state. I don't know that it matters that much. Again, I've never in my political lifespan of 25 years seen an endorsement matter more than Donald Trump's. A lot of people I talked to today said the fact that Nikki is going around with Ralph actually hurts Ralph's chances because Nikki is now so unpopular, having challenged Trump. So a lot of little weird nuances on the ground here. Your guess is as good as mine, but internal polling, I think, has Ralph in the lead right now, and it's his to lose.
I've never seen anything more beautiful than that Newberry Opera House. I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you ever been in the Newberry, South Carolina Opera House? It's to die for. It's so beautiful from the 1800s.
It really is one of the kind of little hidden gems in South Carolina, a beautiful spot.
Indeed it is. Hogan, thank you very much. Always nice to see you.
Thanks, Greta.
And we're about to yell bingo here, but it's bad news bingo. We're about to hit the number of $40 trillion as our national debt. So how much is 40 trillion? Well, imagine this, stacking $1 bills end to end. That stack would not just reach the sun, but it would be enough to wrap around the sun, whose diameter is 110 times more than the Earth, and then stretch back to Earth. Last night during the Newsmax debate for the South Carolina Republican Senate primary, we asked the two candidates how America can tackle this rising federal debt.
I think President Trump has already done a great job cutting spending. He's cut a lot of fraud, but I think there's more fraud to be cut. When I worked in state government, one of the things I focused on was duplication of services. I worked to cut duplication of services to save taxpayers' dollars.
It's cutting spending, it's identifying the waste, fraud, and abuse, and that we already know, but we hadn't had the courage to do it as a body, and that's what I will be a voice for doing that and singling out exactly what items needed to be cut.
The first and only time our national debt was at zero was in 1835. I'll do the math for you. That's 191 years ago. Our president at the time was Andrew Jackson. But then 30 years later, the Civil War began, and that began the one-way direction of our federal debt, only up. Up to, well, we're about to hit, as I noted, a debt record of $40 trillion. But think about this. U.S. taxpayers have to pay interest on that debt. How much is that? At 3.45% interest, taxpayers have to pony up about $1.4 trillion each year just to service our debt. Coming up, a manhunt in Massachusetts after a veteran police officer is found dead in his wife's home. That when the record continues.
You're a proud American in the land of the free. But how do you feel about things right now? Are you thriving or just surviving? What's lifting you up? What's dragging you down? What issues matter to you most? Your voice and your vote is your power. Use that power and share your story with us. The voice of the voter. Newsmax is listening. Visit newsmax.com/voice of the voter.
Almost half of women runners say safety is their biggest concern. Majority of us have to constantly change routes, start times.
Instead of thinking of my pace, we worry about being followed, unwanted attention, and stuff that is simply scary.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device, capable of incapacitating an attacker, letting you get to safety. At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find how you can always safely make it to the finish line.
See you Sunday, Jim. Whoa! Delivery!
Thanks, Kirk.
You like that? See you Sunday, Jim.
Sunday.
See you Sunday. See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.
I just got my pilot's license. See you Sunday!
The whole town can feel it. Sunday's coming.
The NFL on CBS, streaming all season on Paramount+.
See you Sunday.
That's my boy Cam Scadoo.
Whoa!
If you know luxury, it's not just award-winning, it's rewarding. Sattva mattresses support all types of sleepers with durable steel coils and plush organic cotton. Sattva luxury mattresses are handcrafted and assembled in American factories using globally sourced premium materials and brought directly to you with our complimentary in-home delivery and setup service. Sattva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
A manhunt in Massachusetts for a woman. Police are warning that 58-year-old Karen Solomon is armed and dangerous. This warning comes after her veteran police officer husband, Kurt Solomon, was found dead in her home. It's not clear if the pair lived there together. His body was found in her Worcester home by an emergency responder. This was after an unidentified person called 911 reported a medical emergency. According to police, Karen was last seen on a street near her home. She was wearing pajama shorts and a tank top. The Worcester County District Attorney's Office said Karen is being sought for questioning in connection with her husband's death. If you should see this woman, do not approach her. Call 911. Meanwhile, surrogate mother McKenna West, who gave birth earlier this month, is being sued by the biological parents. Why? Well, when West was about 20 weeks pregnant, doctors diagnosed the unborn child with a heart defect. It was then that the biological parents asked West to abort the child. She refused. She then traveled from her home in Alaska to Texas to have the baby. The parents are now demanding more than $100,000 in damages from West for breach of contract and, quote, malicious, outrageous conduct, end quote. Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, joins me. Can you sort this one out for me? Because this one's a mess.
It's a mess. It doesn't belong in court. It's a human tragedy. But what are the damages? The child is alive. He's having heart surgery. Maybe he'll grow up to be the president of the United States. Who knows? There's no limitations on what people can do, even if they're born with heart conditions under today's medical care. So I don't know how this case is going to go anywhere in court. It's a tragedy with an outcome that may end up being a good one.
I did a little research. 20 weeks pregnant, that was generally not viable. The baby wasn't viable at 20 weeks. In the contract, it said that if there's an anomaly in the pregnancy, that they could ask to have it aborted or something. Can you write these contracts? Can you conceive of a way to conceive? Is not a good word, but can you think of a way of a contract that could be written for surrogacy to do away with all these problems that people are having over these surrogate mothers?
Absolutely not. The courts will never compel a woman to have an abortion, will never compel a woman not to have an abortion. So I think, a contract is not useless necessarily, but it's not going to serve the right purpose. The important thing is if you're going to have a surrogate, get somebody you absolutely trust, somebody you think will comply with your wishes. But remember, the surrogate is a human being too. And she's going to have ideological concerns. Obviously, if you want to have an abortion at some point, don't pick somebody as a surrogate who has concerns about abortion. Pick somebody who's neutral on the issue. But I just don't think the law does much in areas like this. Maybe we'll get a decision. I doubt we'll see this woman who probably doesn't have any money having to pay $100,000 because she didn't want to have an abortion and because the child is alive, and let life go on. I just think that there are limits to what the law can do in situations like this, and I think it's a mistake to invoke the law. So I hope the courts will throw the lawsuit out.
Well, I enjoyed being a lawyer, but as time marches on, boy, I see how the law is, lawyers are largely a problem. I hate to say that, but this is the kind of case where everybody should get in the same room and try to work something out. I mean, the courtroom is just not this is not the place to resolve this one.
No, I agree with you. And I think often that even when you get into the room, in the quiet room, there's always the law hovering above you, and people understand that they have the option of going to court, and they think that's going to be an easy way out. But as Oliver Wendell Holmes, I think, once said, short of having surgery, the thing he feared most would be a lawsuit against him. Believe me, I know. I've experienced some in the last decade of my life. Fortunately, I've generally prevailed, but having a lawsuit is terrible. It's terrible for your family. It's terrible for yourself. And anything you can do to avoid it, I think, is good. By the way, having arbitration is not necessarily better, because that is also very expensive and very time consuming. You often just have to take it and say, let the matter be resolved either in the court of public opinion or at home, and see if you can live with the result. So seeking legal redress is not always the best thing for anybody.
Well, I don't know how the child is sick is a hard issue. I don't know whether the child will be able to live a normal life or not, but I also think, as we talk about this now and have a lot of attention on it, if the child survives, 10 years from now, that child's going to go on the internet and read about this, this ugly dispute. There's nothing you can do about it.
A few years ago, where a couple decided to have a reverse vasectomy in order to have a child, so as to save the life of another child, the sister, because it needed some kind of a transfusion of some kind and a lot of the legal ethics people objected to it. And then 15 years later, we saw on television these two siblings hand in hand loving each other. So, sometimes nature does a better job than the law.
Alan Dershowitz, thank you. Nice to talk to you. And Philadelphia police are asking the public for help. Why? Well, they're looking for a person who allegedly last week wore a Chucky-style horror mask and made threatening comments while chasing a woman near City Hall. According to police, at 5:30 a.m. last Wednesday, a 40-year-old female jogger was chased by a Chucky-wearing masked offender. Police went on to say the masked person held a phone in front of the woman and repeatedly asked her, quote, "Are you ready to die?" End quote. Moments before the masked person approached the jogger, he was seen harassing pedestrians in the same area and was denied service at the local Dunkin' Donuts. Police believe the masked person to be a male who's about 5 feet 8 inches tall, between 16 to 20 years old, and as of right now, no arrests have been made. Police are warning if you see this suspect, do not approach and immediately call 911. Coming up, an underwater gas pipeline sabotage now years later with an international manhunt. There is an arrest. That when the record continues.
O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
When Saturday rolls around, I don't want to jump through hoops to watch college football. Good thing DirecTV makes it easy to keep up with my favorite college teams. No hopping between apps or channels.
Stream college football without the hurdles on DirecTV.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
There's a reason the wealthy don't keep all their money in one place. We work hard our entire lives to build wealth for retirement. If your retirement dropped 30% tomorrow, would you be ready? Or would you just have to wait and hope it comes back? The last thing any of us wants is to watch our retirement accounts shrink every time Wall Street panics, the dollar drops, or global uncertainty rises. That's why so many successful Americans turn to gold to help protect their retirement. And Preserve Gold is the only precious metals company I trust and recommend. Let me be frank, gold is not for everybody. And I do not give financial advice, but I do urge you to get my free wealth protection guide from Preserve Gold and learn about a special offer to receive up to $20,000 in free gold and silver. Education is power.
Text Newsmax to 50505.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew. Our cells oxidize, and fatty 15 reduces that risk. C15 is the longevity nutrient. I take this nutrient, my family takes the nutrients, you should too. Fatty 15 has benefits that people actually see and feel.
Steve wears Shady Rays. Shady Rays has styles for however you live. And if life takes them out, we've got your back. Because if your Shady Rays are scratched, broken, or lost, we'll replace them. Get Shady Rays. Get replacement protection.
Well, an international mystery, and finally an update. Remember that catastrophic underwater sabotage of a pipeline in the Baltic Sea? It permanently disrupted a major strategic energy link between Russia and Europe at a pivotal moment in the Ukraine war. It happened 4 years ago on September 26, 2022. A group of people planted explosives on two major pipelines in the Baltic Sea, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. These critical gas lines carry gas from Russia to Germany. And finally, we have another arrest. There has been this new arrest. German prosecutors say Ukrainian man Volodymyr Zhirovov has been arrested. Prosecutors say he's a trained scuba diver. He was arrested in Croatia. He will be extradited to Germany. Back in 2025, another suspect was arrested. His name was Serhiy Kuznetsov. Just last month, he was charged with complicity in a war crime for attacking infrastructure and organizing an explosion. He has denied the charges. Former U.S. Ambassador in NATO and former Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations, Kurt Volker, joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And still we don't know who, I mean, we don't know if these two guys are guilty. I got that. But we don't know who called for it, if they acted alone. So your thoughts on this?
No, that's right. There's a lot that we don't know. And in fact, we may never know. What we do know is that Russia built this pipeline and was using it as a way of maintaining leverage over Germany, trying to divide NATO, trying to prevent Germany from supporting Ukraine, and keeping the German political class dependent on the flow of money that was coming from Russia. So this was a strategic move by Russia. You'll remember that President Trump and the Congress at the time in 2019 sanctioned Nord Stream 2. Because of that, they saw the risks to our transatlantic alliance, and so it was under sanctions. Now, fast forward in 2022, Russia has this full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which is still going on 4.5 years later, and somebody goes in and blows up the pipeline. Was it Ukrainian military intelligence or intelligence services? Maybe. Was it the Russians that hired and used a false flag? Maybe. Was it former Ukrainian special forces people who decided to do it on their own? Maybe. And the fact is, we may never know what really happened.
But who gained from it mostly, do you think? I mean, would Russia really, I mean, who gained from this?
Yeah, well, it definitely benefited Ukraine, because this had been a source of leverage that Russia had over Germany and over others in Europe. That source of leverage was removed. It also, in the end, I would argue, helped Germany, because they were deliberately turning a blind eye to this dependency on Russia for a long time. You may remember Chancellor Merkel at the time saying that, oh, there's no political implication to this project. It's a purely commercial project, which we know is not true. So by taking it away, it basically forced the Germans to face the facts that they had become incredibly dependent on Russia. And now they've changed that substantially, much less dependent and much more robust in their policies.
I remember right after the war started, and I always thought that this was really peculiar, is that in addition to the Nord Stream, that Russia was paying transit fees across Ukraine to transport natural gas. They had a big contract and it was like worth a ton of money to Ukraine. And so they're both trying to kill each other, but they've got this business deal going on. And then I remember the contract was to expire. I should have followed up on it, but if any idea what happened to that? Because I always thought that was weird that you're doing business with the person you hate.
Yeah, that transit of gas across Ukraine has stopped. And the reason that it kept going for a long time was that Ukraine's Western European partners were ramping down their use of Russian gas, but not turning it off to zero. And in fact, they still won't get to zero until the end of 2027. But because the EU countries wanted Ukraine to allow this to go through, the Ukrainians did allow it to go through, and they collected a fee in doing so. But since then, it has been turned off.
Who's winning, who's losing in this war? I mean, is it ever going to end, Ukraine and Russia?
Well, every war ends somehow, sometime, and this one will too. Russia has basically hit the high water mark of what it will achieve in Ukraine, and now it's losing ground. It's not going to gain much more territory. They have lost an extraordinary number of soldiers. The front line's not moving. Now the Russian economy is hurting badly. The Kremlin's finances are hurting. It's going to be very difficult for Russia to continue. So they've already hit their high water mark. Very painful, very difficult for Ukraine, but they've been able to develop their own long-range strike capabilities. They've been able to resist the Russians successfully. So Ukraine comes out of this as a sovereign, independent state, albeit maybe losing some territory. And Russia comes out of this substantially weakened from how it began. And my prediction is there'll never be a peace agreement. Putin will never agree to peace, but I think he can be pushed into a ceasefire that holds.
Is Putin, I always hear Putin's in trouble. I think, how can he be in trouble? You know, he's a dictator. I mean, how can he be in trouble except that they overrule him?
Yeah, dictators are strong and in power, and everything goes their way up until the day it doesn't. Then something snaps. And I think Putin wants to climb down from this before it snaps. We saw this with Khrushchev. We saw this with Gorbachev. We've seen it in other countries where there's a dictator in charge and then all of a sudden, poof, he's gone. And I think Putin is worried about that scenario. And when you see people lining up for gasoline, shortages of gasoline all across Russia, which is supposed to be an energy powerhouse, when you see high inflation and declining economic growth, so it's negative growth and high inflation, when you see lack of access to international finance, these are things that are starting to hit people in Russia, and they know it.
Ambassador Kurt Volker, always nice to see you. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's time for the outrage of the day. Well, Harvard University is trying to make things right after its former morgue manager stole and sold body parts. The body parts had been donated to Harvard for research, and on Monday, the university announced that it had agreed to pay $53 million to settle multiple lawsuits. Harvard had been sued by relatives of the people whose body parts were stolen. Last December, the former morgue manager, Cedric Lodge, was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to trafficking stolen remains. In a letter issued Monday, Harvard University said, quote, while Lodge's sentencing concludes the criminal case against him and the class action settlement agreement, when fulfilled, will conclude the civil cases, the process of recovering from this painful incident continues, end quote. Coming up, could you soon see drones in your city? Where might they come from? That one, the record continues.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide. Real news for real people.
If you're about to replace your roof, stop. There's a solution about 80% less expensive. 9 out of 10 roofs can be saved by Roofmax. Guaranteed to extend the life of your current roof by 5 to 15 years at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. Roofmax's deep penetrating power restores flexibility and water protection. Nobody wants to replace their roof. Restore it instead with Roofmax for 80% less.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
Our veterans deserve nothing less than everything we can do for them because of everything they've done for us.
This village right here shows our commitment to the American military veterans that need a little helping hand, and I can't think of a better place than to locate it here on Long Island.
I promised to Tunnel to Towers that we're going to take care of these heroes that take care of us. So today we broke ground on a promise that we're going to deliver this beautiful village for these great veterans.
Go to T2T.org.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening. Yeah,
it's been forever.
Dale, we can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
Jordan's a new homeowner, and she thought she had a drainage problem.
There's water everywhere.
Turns out it was clogged gutters. It pools near your foundation and can seep into your home. But Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free. Call or click today.
Several days ago, my plane crashed in the wild. Good job, buddy. I'll get you home.
The night has come, and all the land is dark.
I got you. Come on, boy.
Part of the Beast. New trailer online now.
Today, President Trump nominated Dr. Heidi Overton to lead the Food and Drug Administration. Overton is a medical doctor and currently serves as the Deputy Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council. In his announcement at Truth Social, President Trump says Overton is, quote, smart and respected by all. Dr. Heidi will work with Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Oz to rapidly deliver on my priorities of faster cures, increased American innovation, major clinical trial reforms, lower drug prices, and even more MAHA wins, end quote. Overton, of course, will need to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is ramping up its campaign against the International Criminal Court. How? Well, the administration is taking action against the ICC's top officials. Foreign Affairs correspondent Alex Salvi joins me. Alex?
Yeah, Greta, well, this is the most aggressive action to date. The Trump administration hitting the ICC president as well as the top prosecutor with these new sanctions, which is part of this much larger campaign to fully dismantle the court. The State Department is now accusing Tomoko Akane and Abdoulaye Sy of trying to investigate, arrest, or prosecute officials from countries that never consented to ICC jurisdiction. Now, Sy, right there on the right, he's up for election as an ICC judge and currently serves as the senior trial lawyer on the team that sought an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And now the administration is warning that the court could go after Americans next over strikes on narco boats off the South American coast or even domestic deportation actions. Now, the United States already rejects this court's authority, but now it's pressuring allies to boycott the Hague-based institution.
If you want to know a little bit about it, Jack Smith used to work there. These are the people that think they can go out and basically indict any world leader and haul them into The Hague. So we tried to get them to reform and listen to us. They wouldn't do it. They're very arrogant. We've now begun an effort to really try to bring that court to heel.
By the way, there's no information that they're after me.
Now, at least not yet, but these sanctions, backed by the Treasury Department, freeze the officials' U.S. assets and cut them off from the American financial system, which could have ripple effects for their holdings overseas as well. Last year, the administration sanctioned several other ICC officials over the court's pursuit of Israeli leaders for the current actions in Gaza, as well as its earlier probe of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling it a whole-of-government effort with the State Department ready to take further action to dismantle the court, at least how it stands in its current form, Greta.
That's an amazing story. Anyway, Alex Salvi, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a bird, it's a plane. Now, is it an Amazon drone? Well, your city or town might be seeing more of these drones. Today, Amazon announcing it is expanding its Prime Air service to reach nearly 500 cities by the end of this year. Amazon drones currently operate in 7 states: Arizona, Florida, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, and Texas. Where are they going next? Amazon says Georgia, Ohio, Illinois, Idaho, and New York. Not every item can be transported by drone. The packages must be under 5 pounds and fit in a shoebox. Amazon claims that once you hit the order button, your package can arrive between 30 and 60 minutes. Must be nice. Maybe if they had drones in my neighborhood, I would have the $511 worth of Hewlett-Packard printer toner that Amazon said was delivered on August 13 and still hasn't showed up. Coming up, incredible news, a new vaccine for cancer. That when the record continues.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
It's 2 a.m. Your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed. And you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Ridge is back with our 6th annual sweepstakes. With prizes so epic,
We needed a spokesperson to match.
These are pretty nice. You can win a Lamborghini, souped up trucks, or $100,000 cash.
Enter to win for free at Ridge.
Wait, free?
Yeah.
Honey, Mortgage Bunny 6 says we should keep renting.
Mortgage Bunny 6?
Reba says more realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. They track every market so you know when to make your move.
He also says that Bigfoot... Got it.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
This is a bottlenose dolphin, and this is the breakthrough nutrient doctors discovered that helped some dolphins age healthier than others. It's called C15, and the more they had in their diet, the healthier they aged. Now, over 100 peer-reviewed studies later, Fatty 15 is bringing this discovery out of the ocean into everyday life to give your cells the same age-related benefits as all those happy, healthy dolphins. Fatty 15, healthy aging for all.
For all the extra hours and endless meetings, you deserve this. It's the Omaha Steaks Labor Day event, and right now we're offering 50% off site-wide. Order now and you'll get 8 of our famous burgers free when you visit omahasteaks.com/TV.
My dad had never been in better shape. Then he had a stroke and passed away. But he had life insurance, so even after he was gone, he was still taking care of us. Ethos.com, 10 minutes, 100% online.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
You're looking at Carvana's newest and proudest customer. So proud that we're teaming up to create Shackvana. Shackvana will be 100% online so customers can shop from anywhere.
That's so Shackvana.
Visit Shackvana or Carvana and buy your car today.
2 drug companies have teamed up to develop a new vaccine for patients with the deadliest form of skin cancer. The 2 companies, Merck and Moderna, created an experimental personalized vaccine. Late-stage clinical trials have shown promising results. So how does it work? The vaccine is an mRNA-based shot. It is personalized. That means it targets a specific mutation in each patient's tumor. More than 1.4 million Americans currently suffer from melanoma. Each year in the United States, more than 234,000 new cases are diagnosed. Oncologist and Chief Medical Officer of Mercy Bioanalytics, Dr. Prasanth Reddy joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Greta.
Yeah. Sir, let me dumb this down for myself to make sure I understand this right, is that what the mRNA is basically, it's a short list of instructions that is delivered by a vaccine to tell cells, be on the lookout for this, and when this shows up, kill it.
That's 100% right, Greta. Think of it as like a wanted poster. You know, you're basically feeding in information to the law, the immune system, to say, hey, what is the bad guy wearing? What's their face look like? What are their fingerprints? And then you're training the law to then go out there and track this person down. The second part of the treatment actually unlocks the law, gives them permission to be more aggressive, to see the bad guys and then go take care of them.
All right, if 2 people have melanoma, they don't necessarily have the same vaccine. So the melanomas need different recipes, right, for the cells?
You're 100% right. And again, here, what you're looking at is we probably spent 100 years, having drugs available. And then we say, well, will this drug work for Mrs. Smith? Well, this is the first time really where we can look at a proof of concept here where, no, we're going to start with Mrs. Smith, who's different than Mr. Jones, and say Mrs. Smith's cancer is being driven this way. And her treatment is really tailored exactly, just like you said, to make sure that we can attack Mrs. Smith's cancer. Really groundbreaking research, amazing for science, really amazing for patients.
What about if you're an advanced case of melanoma versus not so advanced? I assume it's a much heavier lift for an advanced case.
That is also true in general, but certain cancers like melanoma, sometimes, bladder cancers, kidney cancers, certain lung cancers are driven more because of a failure of the immune system. And that's exactly where Merck and Moderna are also studying the ability for this kind of vaccine to help those patients as well. So the story is very exciting now. It's not, the story hasn't been fully written. We got some work to do. We got some data to come back. But the truth is that even for patients with advanced cancer, stage 4 cancer, that this approach seems to work.
All right, I read that Merck, which makes Keytruda, which is an immunotherapy drug, I'm not really sure how it works, but why do you need these 2 in conjunction with each other? The immunotherapy drug Keytruda and the vaccine?
Yeah, so, I'm a lieutenant colonel of the Air Force. I'm going to try to make it like a war, right? With the cancer cells are like terrorists. First thing we got to do is find them. And so that's what the vaccine part does. It's not really preventing cancer. It's allowing the immune system to say, hey, can I find this terrorist? Can I track them down? The second part, the Keytruda part, the immunotherapy part there, is unlocking the immune system, taking the brakes off, if you will, to say, hey, guys, go out there, get the bad guys. And taken together, this combination is better than the current standard of care, which is just that immunotherapy alone, the Keytruda alone.
All right, this is individual personal vaccines. So I imagine it's a lot of work. But a lot of people have melanoma. How long does it take? Do you have any idea how long it takes to make the vaccine? You take the tumor out, and you make the vaccine from the tumor. How long does that take, and what's the cost?
Yeah, it's relatively quick, and these are expensive kinds of therapies, right? This is one of the challenges, and this is where, President Trump and Secretary Kennedy and others are really pushing, how do we get bureaucracy out of the way? Secretary Kennedy will say, we absolutely need enough data, the science to back, what we're going to put out in front of patients. And so that is the challenge. So what we have to do is make sure this is accessible, this innovation is accessible to patients. So it can take weeks to get this, and it'll take, several months of therapies, to actually get the full treatment in for a patient.
All right, there are a lot of people know the word mRNA from COVID, and they see mRNA and they don't like it. A lot of people don't like it. Is this mRNA? How are these the same and how are they different?
Yeah, the main thing here is you're not trying to prevent something. This is a person, that has existing cancer, and really what we're trying to do is to say, okay, this platform, this mRNA vaccine, allows us to then develop a therapy that you can use for treatment. So think of it more broadly as a platform that we can do various kinds of things for, as far as helping patients. And so we're really applying it a different way. We're talking about somebody who has a known cancer, and then basically teaching the immune system, hey, go find this cancer, and then allowing the immune system, taking those brakes away, to go and do the job. And this is really the first time this has really been proven in a phase 3 trial. The data isn't fully released, but super excited about it.
That's great news. Anyway, Doctor, I hope you come back because I got a lot of questions on this. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Coming up, is it making light of a tragedy, or are people just too sensitive? A new controversy involving the Titanic is making waves online. That when the record continues.
All across the nation, people can't stop talking about Carl Higbie and Frontline for the big news they need to know. Watch Carl Higbie, Frontline, tonight at 6 p.m., only on Newsmax.
IRAs and 401ks were designed to account for a 2% rate of inflation. The idea was you could apply a 4% withdrawal rate and it would last. Inflation is at 3.8%. But when you account healthcare, insurance, food, and energy, the real rate is 8%. Gold's role isn't to make you rich. It's to help you survive what's coming. Call Patriot Gold Group at 1-800-778-4156. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the America 250 no fee for life IRA. Call 1-800-778-4156 and see how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver. Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
Every 8 minutes, a claim of sexual assault is filed against rideshare drivers. But rideshare companies prohibit both drivers and riders from carrying firearms to protect themselves.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device capable of incapacitating an attacker in a fraction of a second and allowing you to escape.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas.
Go to Byrna.com to find out how you can always be prepared to defend.
Your next breakdown is gonna cost you.
Seat sensor, $1,400.
Thermostat, $2,600.
Transfer case, $6,000.
This driver pays for car repairs themselves, and this driver doesn't. They've got endurance.
I have saved over $4,300. I will never pay for covered car repairs again.
Less than 1 year after signing up, Endurance saved me over $7,000.
And the best part? Your rate stays the same no matter how many claims you file.
I expected my rate to change, and it never did.
And coverage costs less than you think.
Totally beat every other competitor.
So, who's gonna pay for your next car repair? You or Endurance?
Right now, you can get $300 off any plan, plus a year of elite benefits, a $2,000 value, free. All backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go online or call 1-833-440-3969 for a free quote.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
There's no way a mouthwash can prevent bad breath for 12 hours.
You're right, Val. Mouthwash can't, but this is dentist-developed Smart Mouth Activated Mouthwash.
Activated?
Yeah, if your mouthwash isn't activated, it's not Smart Mouth. See, this plus this activate for 12 hours of bad breath prevention, guaranteed. Try it. You won't have bad breath in the morning. Good night, Phil.
Get dentist-developed Smart Mouth today. It's the smarter mouthwash, available at these fine retailers.
It's now time for today's edition of What Do You Think? Okay, today's story involves children and the Titanic. Yeah, you heard me right. A farm in the United Kingdom is facing backlash for having this children's ride. It's a slide called the Titanic. It is modeled like the Titanic. So how does it work? Starts out flat, and then the front of the boat rises as children slide down. This ride is about 7 years old, but recently parents have been commenting online. Many are calling the ride offensive and distasteful. In the past, the park apologized, saying about the name, quote, "We are absolutely not making a joke about it." So what do you think? Is this offensive or not? Let me know. Send an email to emailgreta@newsmax.com. And we have an update on Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley's vacuum. An Iowa resident just gifted the senator a new Hoover vacuum. This model, new to the senator, is not new. It's 17 years old. It's younger than his last vacuum, who he named Beth. Beth lasted almost 50 years before, as we have reported, she stopped working. So Senator Grassley has been searching for a new Hoover vacuum. He already tried this vacuum that was only 40 years old, but it didn't work. Senator Grassley says he will give us an update once he has tried out his new vacuum, and we anxiously await that report. And if you want to watch the entirety of last night's debate, not just that soundbite, in the South Carolina Republican Senate primary, you can head to our YouTube page. It's on youtube.com/@NewsmaxTV. There you can see how both candidates answered all 20 questions, not just that one everybody's showing. And it's all being dissected, of course, that one by the media. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Stay with Newsmax.
Thank you.